Welcome to Spirit Journey Collective. I'm your host, Sarah Ty. Get ready for compelling conversations with guests of all walks of life who believe they have found their purpose. Together, we will uncover unique backstories, hearing the raw experiences that led them to the work they are doing today. Let's expand our minds together with the captivating stories and inspiration that awaits. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Spirit Journey Collective. I have a really great guest today. Her name is Kaitlyn Cook, and she's a business strategist and coach, which I always love talking to business coaches because there's just so much wisdom, especially more in this for those of us in the spiritual communities. So thank you so much for being here today, Kaitlyn.
You are so welcome. Thank you. I'm excited for this conversation. This is going to be lovely.
Yeah, me too. So why don't you start with introducing yourself to our listeners a little bit more about what it means to be a business strategist and coach and what you offer.
Yeah, sure. So I actually started my journey 5 years ago, and so it evolved from business coach to now more of a strategist and consultant. So there's lots of facets to what I do, but fundamentally I help empower and inspire business owners to achieve the goals that they want. Yes, from a tangible perspective, but how do they actually want to be feeling each and every day? Who is it that they want to become in order to achieve this? And the way that looks and the road does evolve and shift and change depending who I'm serving. And it has just been, it's incredible. It's so fun. And it's one of the best things I've ever done in my entire life. And I'm very grateful and fortunate to be doing this.
That's amazing. And I love how you focus a lot on, you're mentioning that you focus a lot on helping people also see how do they feel in their business. Because I think being a business owner, it's hard to separate like the personal and the business. And sometimes we feel like we have to be so businessy, but where's our authenticity in the midst of that? Right. And I think that that's really where the anchor is for ourselves, being ethically sound too, right? Because sometimes we get caught up in we should be doing all these things, but maybe it doesn't even align with our values and who we are. So I love that that's one of the focuses that you have. So how did you get into this work? How did you find this work? Have you always been coaching, or is this a newer endeavor that you discovered?
So to answer that question, I'd have to take you back to when I was 16 and I had to do a school-based apprenticeship. So I basically went and you had to apply to work somewhere for the summer. And I was like, no idea. And then somebody knew somebody, and all of a sudden I worked in a broking firm doing home loans and helping in that capacity. But the underlying tone of what I was doing, it was the coach element, helping people achieve their financial goals. And I was like, this is so cool. Like, no one had ever explained to me that you can have an idea and then bring it to life. So that's what I would do at 16. And then fast forward, I ended up working in the bank for many years, and I did lots of different roles. And then my manager at the time was like, can you do business strategist? Can you be a business specialist for us? I'm like, I am petrified of business. Like, I was terrified of business. And so they said, just give it a go. Just try out the role. So I did. So I remember I served my first business customer and I was shaking. I was so nervous. I was terrified because I thought they were in a different planet. I thought, oh my God, business is such another world. And then I started talking to him and he's like, I get to do what I want to do each and every day. Like, I had this idea and this is what it is. I'm like, oh my God, this is incredible. And then I was just like, something inside of me went, yes, this is what I want. I don't know exactly what it is, but there's this spark. And I was like, I want to follow this element of freedom. I ended up being number 2 in Australia as a business specialist. And that's when I was like, I'm just going to take a career break and move from Australia to the UK and completely change my entire life and just figure out who I am. And so with that, I met my English partner. And through that, neither of us, we'd both been to each other's countries, so we couldn't go back unless we paid $7,500 to get a visa, which we didn't have at the time. So we're like, let's just use that money instead to travel Southeast Asia for a year and see how our relationship is. So it was when we landed in Thailand that in 2019, I had to open my laptop and go, what the hell am I going to do online? What am I going to be able to do to get paid online? So then I figured out my skills. And then moment by moment, it evolved 5 years later to business strategist and coach and helping people in many different ways in their business. It's been a massive journey, and it's one that it's so fun. But you move through like the imposter syndrome, you move through how to build the systems. Like, there's such an internal and external world of evolution you go through with your business. So yeah, I'm almost celebrating my 6th year in business, and I feel very grounded now.
That is such a fascinating story. I mean, you were kind of all over the world and finding yourself all at the same time.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, that's amazing though. I mean, especially building a business specifically online, I think is even harder in a way because you have to be seen and found, on top of getting clients, but that's how you get clients is to be seen. And so did you have clients in Thailand as well?
Yeah, so I was actually quite fortunate. So from a belief system, so I love integrating both the internal and the external world of business. So my belief system, because I'd always had an office and I just have people walk in my office each and every day and go, I need help with this business, I need help with this finance. So I'd always have clients come to me. So I always had that belief that clients come, it's easy. And I was very fortunate. The way I actually literally started was I'm on a platform called Upwork, which is the largest platform for freelancers, and I'm the top 1% expert on there. But I had that platform, and that was the only thing I had. I didn't do social media or anything, and so people found me there. So I was in Thailand when I started, and then we went to the Philippines, and then we went to then we went to Indonesia, then we went to Australia, then we had our son, then we went to the UK. So it started there, and it's evolved and grown since that.
That's so cool. Very lots of layers to it. And
Yeah.
I love something that you said a little bit early on in your story. You said that you didn't, when you were 16, you didn't know that you could just have an idea and have it come to life. And I think that that is a new idea that's kind of taken hold around the world because I think probably what 5, 10 years ago, that was not something that most people knew they could do either, especially 20 years ago. But, if you look just in the last 5, 10 years, most people would have been like, I can't do that. Like there's maybe a smaller percentage of people who are actually saying yes to those callings. But in the last 5, 6 years, more and more people are realizing that, oh, wait, I can do my own thing. I can actually follow my passions. I don't have to get into these careers that most people tell us we should do, right? And I can actually break away from it and do something I love. It's a newer concept, but it's really cool that you found that. And it sounds like you're also now helping other people realize that they can do that too.
Oh, most definitely. Because I think I'm all about letting go. I'm not about putting more on. I'm about just letting go and removing the layers, removing the boxes you've put yourself in. Because, like, what I see a lot of times for businesses when they want to succeed, and when I say businesses, I'm talking to like the CEO or someone high up, and it's like they're a person, they can only think within the parameters of what they believe. So if you continue to give yourself a lot of limitations on what you're capable of, your business can only go so far. So it's really about capturing these ideas and figuring out how you can make the best of it and learning that process, because it's a process to have an idea, execute it, figure out how it went, how did you feel doing it, and then do it again. And I think especially with AI and technology the way that it is, and it's evolving, it's allowed us to grow our minds and what's capable in such a way that we didn't have the capacity to think beyond this, decades ago, but now we do. So now it's opening people's mindsets and to be like, oh, maybe I could do it this way, or maybe I could do it that way, and having the courage to actually try it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I'm recently with my own business started kind of implementing AI a little bit and really just for things like writing my summaries because oh my gosh, trying to figure out how do I say this and I'll do like a rough draft and then it polishes it up for me. But I know this idea that there's more than what we thought was possible and having more tools which is really beautiful. So I have a question. With your business, do you work with like small businesses or do you tend to work more with like big businesses?
So if I have a conversation with somebody and it aligns, I say yes. And that can range from anywhere. That can be from a startup to a Fortune 500 company. It really doesn't matter, everything in between. But there has to be, for me to be able to collaborate and provide the best service, I need to have synergy with the person I'll be working with or their team. So a methodology of how I always approach it is I jump on a discovery call and we just have a conversation. And I always have because I've served over 10,000 people by now, and I've been doing this for years. So I have a very yes or no internal indicator of who's going to be the best. So I actually follow that. So in the realms of, I know when I first started, everyone's like, have a niche, you have to do this. And I was like, but I've never had a niche, and it's never like, And so I actually really struggled with that identity of it has to be this certain way. And I went, actually, no, what if it could be I could just serve anybody where we both have that excited energy. It's fun. It's like aligned. It makes sense. And it's a cool project. It's a cool way to work. So I'm working with like a family in the UK who's a family run business. And then I'm also working with like a CEO going from 7 to 8 figures. And I'm working with somebody to start up a hairdressers. Like it varies and ranges, but the fundamentals, the commonality between all the customers I work with is they want to have a desire for more. Not from the I don't have enough, but from how cool would my life be if I could actually do this? And it's this inquisitive nature that they have.
Yeah, I know. I love that, especially because there is this idea out there that you have to niche down. And that is really hard. And some people find their niche and they thrive. So my personal business, I'm a tarot reader and spiritual channel. So again, I also don't have really much of a niche either. I work with all ages. I work with, there's maybe certain questions I'm not the biggest fan of, but, and I do have like a specific preferred question-ish, you know what I mean? More geared towards self-growth, really. Yeah, kind of like how you say that, for you, it's the synergy. It's not about the niche and the subject or the type of business. It's the synergy. It's kind of similar to my business in that if they're there to grow and learn and be open to what's coming in, then they're my person. If they're just here for is he looking at my stories on my Instagram stories, like, oh, stop, those aren't my questions. You know what I mean? But not being able to, but feeling like you have to niche down to a certain type of something, it can feel really confining. Versus I think there's a difference between knowing what your magic is, knowing what your gift is, and then leaning into that versus, well, what's your niche, which makes it feel very boxed. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that, because I think that it's important for people to realize you don't have to do it a certain way. It's more about doing it your way, right?
Yeah, definitely. And what I've found, the more I've gone on this business entrepreneurial journey, the more I'm coaching others, I'm coaching myself simultaneously. But it's the more you know yourself, the more you figure out who you are, how you show up, how you like to show up, what works for you, how you magnetize clients to you, what's the best way for you to speak. That becomes quite effortless. And that in itself is your niche because it's your way. And niche is just about being able to speak to a specific amount of people who want what you want. Instead of speaking to everybody, you're speaking to the certain type of people. But there's really a duality that occurs, I've found, when you create the clarity on who you're speaking with in your mind, cognitively, your neural pathways connect, and you're like, okay, these are the people I'm speaking with. You automatically speak to them more clearly. And then what happens is they start to find you. So there is this real duality that has to occur. So it can feel a bit icky when you're starting, most definitely, because you're trying to find your way through it. But then if you kind of just go, there is no rules. If there is no rules, how would I want this to be? Who would I want to serve? How would I want to show up? And play in that realm instead of how can I make it work because somebody said it has to do it that way? Because that will really restrict your innovation and the ways that you could grow.
Yeah, absolutely. Because and that makes perfect sense. Even with my business, there are people who I'll read for and they just get it. It lands, they hear me, it makes sense. We're able to dive in deeper even at that point because it's so resonant. And so it's definitely knowing who can actually understand what I'm here, my gifts. So that way I can help them versus talking to someone who's like, I don't get it. And then it's extra hard because then you have to find another way to communicate with them for them to understand you, and it's just extra work, and then you're not even sure if it's going to pan out for them at that point because there's just a disconnect, right? So that's a really great way to explain that. Do you feel like you found your purpose in the work that you're doing now?
Yeah. Yeah, I did. For me, it's like it's all about empowering people, just empowering them in being able to be who they are, love and accept who they are, and achieve what it is that they want with sheer clarity and fun. Like there's such an element of fun of what I do now. But But I remember after my son was born and I was in such a state of postpartum depression and had no idea who I was. And I was like crying on the couch, as you do when you're a new mom, and you're just like, who am I amongst all this? Like, I know who I am for him and I know who I am for my partner, but I was like, and I know who I used to be for my clients, but who am I? Like, what does this even mean? And what I kept found with, I literally was like, I'm going to be the best at finding my purpose because I'm such a high achiever. I was like, I'm going to be the best. So I was intellectualizing it all. And it's not an intellectual, it's not a thinking, it's a feeling. You can always talk yourself in or out of something, but you can never diminish the feeling when you've got that spark and you're like, that's it. That's that inner knowing. So I'd always set an intention when he was born, and I was going through that transitional phase of being lost and not really and wanting to find my purpose, to be like, what am I here to do? What do I actually want to do? And I started by asking myself, what excited me today? Like, what is it that cultivated something nice within my body? And it started to move more, like every time I spoke to a client about how they could be better, like something they could shift or change to be better. And there was that spark that went off, that aha moment. I was like, oh, I think it's that. So for me, the way I cultivate that in a day to day is by, well, I always set an intention when I speak with somebody, but it's about empowering them to be whoever that they need and want to be to create what it is that they want to create in the world, because they want the world to be better. They want to be better. They want us all to be better. And that in itself can look like business coaching, business strategist, business mentor. But the underlying is that empowerment, that inner, like, I've got this, I can do this, that self-belief.
It's really beautiful that you're able to share, how even though you were already successful in your business, then you became a parent, and then you kind of had to refine yourself again, because I don't think that, especially in the business realm, I don't think people talk about the fact that we're human a whole lot, we all are evolving and growing. We're all going through different phases, and so we're going to go through those moments, but it doesn't mean that we're less than what we were before. It just means now we're having to shift and transform into something new. So that was, a beautiful story about how you were able to find yourself in the midst of that and not get lost in that, well, wait, I don't know who I am anymore. Can I still do what I'm doing? And it's like, yeah, you can. And not only that, but you're now able to come in with a different tool belt than you had before, right? Because you went through that. And I also really love how you describe purpose right now, how it was for you, because my definition of purpose is it's something that lights you up, that just, it's like that spark, the way that you're saying, it's that spark within you that's like, yes. But then it's also, you're helping other people at the same time. There's something you're giving back to the world at the same time. So it's that both and. It's not just only about helping others if it's not sparking you up. It's not giving you that light. So I love that, both in just all the different pieces of that story and how, it's your purpose. I think that it really beautifully defines what it is to be human and to really connect with what it is that lights you up. What is a main struggle you see with your clients? I know you work with all sorts of different, types of businesses. So this is gonna be an interesting question to see if there's a common thread between all of them. But is there one common struggle in most of the people you work with? And then what's an advice you give for that struggle?
Such a good question. A big struggle that I see is when a CEO, it's their time to be a leader, to step into the leadership role. Whether that means they're a CEO, they're just a business owner of their own business with no employees, or that means they're CEO where they've got 10, 20, 30 employees. It doesn't matter. The fundamentals is the same. They're ready to lead, but they don't know how to. And because they don't know how to, their business stagnates because the business doesn't know how to go because it doesn't have a leader. So what happens is I find people tend to come to me one of two reasons. Their growth is stagnated and like, what have we done wrong here? Or the second one, they really want to grow, but the CEO doesn't know what to do. They're like, I'm spinning too many plates. It's too overwhelming. And so for me, I'm all about the internal and the external, because you have to do both simultaneously to allow for that real success. And what I find is when you need to become a leader, it's an identity shift. So what will happen is people in the starting phase of business or growing phase of business, they will have defined themselves and put themselves in a bucket of how they believe, or a box of where they believe they need to be. And what occurs is they're ready to break away that bucket, or that box, but they don't know where to step into. They actually don't know who they're meant to be. And it's not that they have to be anybody, but it's like, what's this next identity for you to move into? And there's a real letting go process within this. And it's that letting go that's really hard, especially for business owners who are used to doing it all themselves. You've held on to everything so much, so tightly, and you've done it this way and this way and this way and that way. And then all of a sudden it's like you've got to step up, but you can't step up holding everything you're holding because it'll all fall apart. So what are you ready to let go of? That is a big, big piece. It's that real internal leadership shift. Once that occurs with the leader of a business, then everybody else can start leading within the business. And it's a big challenge because I went through it many, many, many times. I've been through it. I'm continuously evolving in through it, but I don't think it's something that's spoken about a lot. And it's something I notice all the time.
Yeah, it's kind of more about like stepping into your power and knowing it's your right to do so. I have a tarot card that actually represents that. It's the Emperor. And whenever I see that, it's like, okay, so you're being called to take up space and step into your power. And there's that the leadership usually brings imposter syndrome. Like, well, wait, who am I to be that? So I really like that, because I think that on all levels, like all the different levels of business, there's an element of that. Even those that don't have employees, I feel like there's still an element of they have to lead. Someone has to lead themselves. Like, are you just kind of bobbing in the water, or are you getting in the boat and actually steering it somewhere?
It's time to take a short break from our wonderful speaker. Are you in the need of guidance around love, career, family, life, or purpose? Embark on a spiritual journey inward with an intuitive tarot reading. Depending on what you're needing and looking for, I offer private one-on-one sessions as well as personalized email readings. It doesn't matter what the question is. A reading with me provides connection with your higher self, offering curated personal messages, or what I like to refer to as spiritual roadmaps, guiding you to the future outcome you desire. Readings are insightful and affordable. If you'd like more information or to schedule a reading with me, please see the link below.
For those that are maybe a CEO in this position, or a starter up business where they're bobbing in the water but they're kind of like directionless, I know you mentioned letting go and doing some of that inner work. Is there anything specific that you walk them through in this particular transitional place for them?
Yes, most definitely. So when you're bobbing in the water and you're stuck and you're like, well, there's stagnation in your growth. So if you're not growing, it's because you don't know where you're going. And if you don't know where you're going, you're already there. So there's a couple of steps I would suggest people go through with this. If you're stagnating and you're frustrated and there's no movement and you're feeling stuck, just write down where you want to go. Redefine what your end goal is, because you've lost along the way or you've surpassed it without realizing it. So write down what you actually want. What does that look like? What does that look like in terms of financials? Because we're going to reverse engineer the financial aspect, but also what does that look like in terms of your day? How do you want your day to be? What time do you want to wake up? What do you want to do when you first wake up? How do you want to feel? Do you want to have X amount of clients per day? Do you want to have one-on-ones? Do you want to be selling products? Like really redefine what your end goal is. So when you conceptualize it, when you create that idea and you expand on it, then you can see it in your brain and your neurons can connect. And when your neurons can connect, you can figure out ways to get there. But if you are not moving, it's because you don't know where you're going. So that's the first part. You literally, and some people are really good at this, and some people, like, it's not that someone's good or someone's bad, but it depends. Everyone has a different time frame. So some people can do this in one sitting and they're done. Others, it takes them a while to ruminate on the idea and to grab different parts. It's all fine. It's not just ruminate on where you want to go. So there's your anchor point. And then the second person is, who do you have to become? And then what I say by become, it doesn't mean you're changing everything about you, but it's what's that one thing? What is that one thing that's going to change when you achieve that? So does that mean if you want to start your day at 6 a.m., but you're not getting up until 9:30, maybe you can try and get up at 9 a.m. And what you're doing is you're slowly changing your day to day, right now as it is, to the day that you want it to be. And that means one step at a time. And that's how you create compounding continuous growth over a very quick amount of time, because you change one thing at a time. Always, if you're not moving, it's because you don't know where you're trying to go.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Even the who do you need to become for that? That reminds me a lot of different manifestation coaches will say something similar. It's like, how do you start to live from that space now? Because I think we have this idea of, oh, we're somewhere over there. And it's like, well, actually, whatever it is that you're wanting to become, it's already dormant within you. You just have to reconnect with, or really just connect with it, right? And build it, build upon it. So yeah, no, I love that. What's one lesson that you've personally learned in your journey so far, with your business and everything? What's one lesson that you've learned so far that you feel like others can benefit from learning or hearing from you so they can learn too?
When you do less, you achieve more. I have really cultivated a sense of ease in my business even in the last 6 months. Really, in the last like 6 weeks, it's really, I've like world weight. Like I had a bath the other Tuesday during the day, and I was like, this is like, oh, hello. It's like we're conditioned. There's this belief that if we have to be good enough, and there's this always underlying of I'm not enough. But it's like I have to work 10, 12, 15 hours, and I have to prove I'm everywhere, and I have to prove I'm doing all this. And what that does is it just literally puts you still in that place of it's not enough. I'm not enough because I need to do more. So what will happen is every goal you try to achieve, it's never going to be enough, because the energy you had going into it was it's not enough. So when you switch it just slightly and go, what if I made things easier? What if it just got to be easier? How would I feel about that? And there's a real softness and ease that comes with it. And then you would go, cool, well, what would I do today if that was to happen? And for me, I take inspired action. I work very deliberately, but not near as much as I used to. And I get like a month's worth of stuff done in half a day. And then I'm like, cool, that's done. I feel accomplished. So there is such a power to slowing down. And when you slow down, you know where you're trying to go. You give yourself space to think beyond the immediate of having to do. Because if you always do, you never know what you're trying to achieve, because you're always in the action stage. So you have to actually stop and think, what is it that I want to be doing? So for me, it's definitely slow down to achieve more.
That is definitely a newer concept that I've been seeing too. I feel like it's the shift from the more masculine hustle culture to more of that feminine, like you can still have it all, but also where's your rest and where's your gentleness and where's your time to actually be and be present? Because I feel like the hustle culture, it works, but you're so consumed with, like you were saying, do, or you're so consumed about thinking about where you're headed, where you're kind of missing out what's happening right in front of you. And I mean and I feel like that masculine energy, it's important to get things done, but I feel like that feminine energy is coming in more to balance it out, where it's like, okay, like you're saying, I'm gonna be really deliberate, I'm gonna get these things done, and then you have that other more softer space after that. So I really love that. I hear more and more successful people share that, and they're doing less, but they're getting more benefits out of it. They're more healthier, physically and mentally, and all of that. And then they're also making more money in that space too, because they're not. And I love how you mentioned the not enough space, that feelings of not being enough, because when you're able to know you have enough, then that lack mentality kind of fades away and you just trust that it's going to be there. But I feel like that trust comes from that slower space. But if you don't have that slower space, you're constantly in the go, go, go. And then you kind of miss out on that. Oh, wait, I can just have it without,
Yes.
pushing for it.
Yeah. And I think something I want to add to that, because there's such a duality in my life and what I do with clients. So like if a real feminine energy comes in, they've built their business from a very feminine place. So there's flow, but there's no structure. So I need to bring the masculine in for them. And simultaneously, if there's the masculine, then there's no flow, there's no femininity. So you have to have both. It's not one or the other, but it's how to balance that. And specifically for women, we have the superpower of the menstrual cycle. So to actually balance that month to month, depending on our hormone levels, will dictate our cognitive activity and our energy. So if we actually flow in with that each week, we honor the spaces we're in. So, like for example, you've got your springtime after your bleed. That week's all about ideas. That's about innovation. So that's a lot about space. You want to actually create a space in that first week, and then the week after that, it's all about summer. So you actually want to be talking more, collaborating more, speaking, doing podcasts, all of that type of stuff. And then you've got your autumn, which is more about putting all the details in place. So it's more methodical, step by step. So that would be more of the masculine energy. So that's where you would actually bring the strategy and the systematization of your business, because that's how your brain and your hormones are naturally wired at that time of the month. So it's not about every day has to be feminine, every day has to be masculine. There's such a flow to it. But when you can figure out your own body and what works for you, it becomes your own superpower.
That is really fascinating. I love that. I actually makes me want to look more into that particular aspect. But yeah, no, for sure. It kind of comes back to what we were talking about in the very beginning about doing it your own way, finding your own flow, not looking at your neighbor or your coworker, or not coworker, but like colleague or something, and be like, oh, they're doing it this way, so I need to do it. I got to match or mirror them. It's like, oh, cool, they're doing it that way. I'm gonna do it my way, and really, leaning into what the superpowers and what they're good at, and leaning into that flow. I love that. So from here, I would love to shift to what I like to call synchronicity story time. It's one of my favorite segments of the podcast, just because I feel like it kind of brings a little bit of that magic into the day-to-day world that we live in. Do you have any fun paranormal synchronistic stories up your sleeve that you could share with us today?
So it's not necessarily paranormal, but this is always just cool. I'm a twin. And so so it's like the twin connection. So when my twin was 10, she got her period. And I didn't have mine, but I had the worst period pain. It was stomach pain, I called it at the time, because I didn't know about it. And she never had it. And then when I was 13, I got my period, and then she started getting period pain. And then together, if we got it together, it would amplify the pain. And so there's this real this real deep connection we have as twins, which I've always been fascinated with, and I think it's really, really cool. But from the standpoint so for synchronicities for me, I set them up. So I always set intentions. I'm such a realist, but I'm also like spiritual and intuitive, and like there's such a combination of my internal world. So for me, I always ask, if this is the right thing, I want to see blue butterflies. And so basically to set the tone. 18 months ago, actually, I've been setting the intention that I really want to align and to who I'm meant to be. I want to become this next version of me, and I want to know that I'm on the right path. I want to like feel this next trust within myself and just this calmness of who I am. And I'm like, every time I see blue butterflies, I know I'm on the right path. And then I had this vision. I was like, if I've achieved it, I'll just see blue butterflies everywhere. And the other day, I saw a woman who had a dress full of blue butterflies. And then, so it like happens small, like little bits. But then I literally saw 2 blue butterflies. I've never seen a blue butterfly in my life, like a real one, just fly past me. And I was just like, oh. And I had such a sense of calm. And I was like, oh, cool. I'm on the right path then. Amazing. That's kind of more the synchronicities that I do. I set that intention and that sign, I guess.
That is so cool. That gave me chills a little bit. And it was funny too, because I was thinking, like, I was even thinking to myself, have I ever seen a blue butterfly? I've seen white, and I've seen orange and red, and I've seen different colored ones, but yeah, that's so cool. But that makes sense, because it's still a surrender of sorts, because synchronicity is kind of where things line up in an uncanny way that you can't dispute. You're like, well, I can't explain that. But I think intentions, it's not that you're creating it per se, it's just that you're surrendering it. Like, okay, I understand that I'm going to be getting signs, and this is the sign I'm requesting.
Yeah.
And then just waiting for it.
I think as well, actually, on this topic, you reminded me that when we were living in Indonesia with my partner, and I was always told I was never going to have children. I was always told I was never, ever going to be able to have any kids. So it was never something that was in my mind. And I remember I was writing my journal, and I was meditating quite a lot at this stage. And I wrote, like, I want to feel happy. I want to feel free. I want to feel like the most love I've ever felt. And that month we conceived our child and didn't even know it. And I was told I'd never have kids or anything like this. So from like a real like surrender is such an underlying the power of the synchronicities. It's like, what are you with? Because it's not about how it looks, it's about what you want to feel. And that kind of creates that connection piece. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I love that. That reminds me a little bit. I mean, you kind of touched on it earlier, but how you want to feel day to day and then chasing that. And then it reminds me a little bit of this, I don't remember the name of the author, but this book called The Abundance Project. And I think the author his name is Derek Rydell, maybe, but he talks about how he did an experiment basically where he was a waiter and it wasn't his dream job. He wanted to be doing something different. But for that whole month, he lived every single day like he was doing whatever it was he wanted to do.
Okay.
And, he just talked about how his whole life changed. Basically, by living where he wanted to become, he decided how he wanted to feel. And he just, no matter what was going on, that was what he was feeling. Within like 2 to 3 months, he actually was already working the job he wanted and was moving up. And it was just from that decision of who I want to be is who I'm just going to be now, regardless of what's happening in my life. And
Yeah,
it's just so powerful.
it's incredible because, and this really ties into the element of like who you have to become. And I mean it in the sense of not the intellectual, the trying, the pushing. It's like allowing yourself just to feel, because when you feel good or you feel more than you do now, you think differently, and when you think differently you create something different and the outcome is different. So it's really about how do you feel from 0 to 10 on a day-to-day basis. What's your range of emotions? And if you're at a 1, try and just get to a 2 and just see what happens and see the changes that occurs. And from a marketing and sales standpoint, you become magnetic because people radiate for you because you're actually at a higher level of emotions and you're feeling better about yourself, so you're more magnetic. That's literally what I've used for my client. For clients, I don't market very much. I just kind of work on how I'm feeling and my thoughts, and it just comes in. It's really cool.
Yeah. And I do like how you really recommend starting with those small steps. So if you're a 1, it's really hard to go from a 1 to a 2, but just making that decision and just doing that small push, I think it's pretty much impossible to go from like a 1 to a 10 unless you like win the lottery or something like that, right? But just moving from 1 to a 2, because then it's easier to go, okay, I'm feeling a little better. Maybe I can move myself to a 3, and it's not taking it on like, oh my gosh, and then beating yourself up for not being in a better state of mind. It's like, I'm having a rough morning this morning. Okay, what can I do what's the one little thing I can do now to move myself up to the next thing? Just one little thing, I love that because it's very manageable. It feels believable. And I think part of that is tricking the mind a little bit that it is believable, that we can change our mood. Because when we're in that funk, it's really hard to talk ourselves into it.
Oh, most definitely. And like I'm somebody, like I've dealt with depression and anxiety all my life, and it's like it's not an easy thing to be conscious of and acknowledge how you talk to yourself and how you feel about yourself. But it's the acknowledgement and acceptance piece that helps you move forward, because it's like you're allowing it instead of pushing away from it. So there's a real subtle difference. But it is because when you start to decide, actually, I want to feel differently, I want to think differently, you create a new habit. And when you're creating, your brain needs 21 days in order to form a new neural pathway. And after 21 days, it becomes easier. So instead of it being, I have to do this, it's like, I get to do this. This is just me. This is just easy. So that's what I mean when I'm talking about becoming someone different or changing how you feel about yourself. Just 21 days. That's all you got to do. Just something, just tiny little bit every day for 21 days. And then it's after that, it gets easier and easier and easier. But what happens is within those 21 days, things become easier. Life becomes easier. Ideas become easier, and you feel better. And then you go, and it becomes that I've got to keep doing this because it's actually feeling really good.
Yeah. You have to meet yourself where you are. There's like an acceptance that needs to happen.
Yeah.
Not like a denial. I think that's another thing that a lot of us are kind of taught in society is sweep it under the rug. It's doesn't really exist, but it does. And if you run from it, you're just creating more of it.
Like it will always be there. And I used to say, because I ran from it for so many years until I had to confront it. And then I was like, why don't I just confront it earlier? But like when you run from it, it's like it's here in the pillar, but it'll always be attached to you. So it's like you're trying to go, eh. But instead, if you just embrace it and take it with you, there's a softness, there's a compassion, there's an acceptance piece. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So my final question I love to ask everyone, do you believe that we all have a purpose here?
Yes, I do. Whatever that, but I do believe that we all define what that looks like and feels like to ourselves. So there is not one definitive way in which a purpose can be derived. It's whatever you decide it to be. And I think purpose can be found in some of the greatest struggles that we have in our own lives, because from pain becomes this deeper sense of who you are and this deeper sense of, oh my God, I could do that. What else am I capable of? And so when you're having a breakdown or a moment like that, you're having a breakthrough, you're allowing yourself that next. So even every now and then, if you haven't found your purpose and you're just like, I'm trying to find it, because I always was trying to find it. And it wasn't until I was in my deepest sorrows that I just went, what would feel good today? Because for me, purpose is what feels good to me and to the people I serve. And that's what I follow. And it's really easy when you just go, what would feel good right now? And yeah, it gets to be whatever you want it to be.
Yeah, no, I love that absolutely. And I love that. I've heard that before, pain into purpose, turning your pain into purpose. And I mean it makes sense because for those of us that are more aware of how journeys work, we know that there's always the evolution and the transformation and the growth. And so those of us that have done this before, we kind of know, okay, there's some pain there. We have to transmute or heal. It's just part of the process. Some people run from it or they don't want to accept it. I like this kind of like to lovingly say they're sleepwalking because they're just not wanting to really break through. Like you're saying, they're having a breakdown. They're not wanting to break through and see where it can take them. But yeah, I love the pain into purpose because it's like you're understanding that, okay, there's another level coming and there's something new I'm going to be learning from this and another sense of purpose. Because I do think even our purposes evolve, there's like an underlining theme and it tends to grow and evolve with us, and so we learn from kind of like how you were sharing when you were going through postpartum, you learned something massive from that so maybe you might be working with a client who's going through that exact same thing. And now you can say, you know what, I was there, and have that kind of compassion and wisdom to help see them through it. So there is a purpose that can absolutely be found in some of our deepest sorrows and pains, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I think for those who haven't had deep sorrows and pain, you can still find it. Like it meets you where you are. And if you're willing and wanting and curious to find it, you can find it. But I think I wish I'd said to myself when I was like, because I was obsessed. Like I was like, I have to find my purpose. I have to find my purpose. And then and it was all about the comparison because I wanted to find my purpose because I wanted to feel I thought that person was feeling. So instead of looking externally at what I thought somebody else felt, I just went, well, how would that feel to me? How would I want to actually feel? And I figured it out so much quicker doing it that way. Because if you're always looking externally at what somebody else has, then you're always going to be changing it. And it's always going to be moving the goalpost. But it should start with you.
Yeah, 100%. This has been such a wonderful conversation. Like really, it's very deep, but also practical and tangible and really great advice as well. I know I'm going to definitely be taking notes when I listen to this and edit it later. How can our listeners find you if they want to work with you or if they want to, get your resources and yeah, how can they find you?
Yeah. So on my Instagram and my YouTube, it's Grow with Kaitlyn. I love providing education and empowerment in practical advice and tools. I've also launched Kaitlyn Cook Collective. So my company is called KCC. So it's Kaitlyn Cook, but it's also the collective. So the collective looks like coaching sessions. It also looks like tangible workbooks. How can you actually move through this problem that you're facing at the moment? As well as courses as well. So that's where people can find me and on my Instagram, and I've got a TikTok account as well. I never thought I'd have a TikTok account, and obviously my LinkedIn as well.
Perfect. I'll be sure to put all that in the show notes so our listeners can find you if they want to work with you. And yeah, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been such a really, like I said, very tangible, practical conversation, but with that spiritual element in as well, which I love because I can talk about that side all day. And yeah, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and thanks for having the space for the people to be able to listen and learn about business and spirituality. Thank you. This was lovely.
Thank you for joining me on another inspiring episode. Remember, your purpose is a unique and unfolding path. I hope these conversations have ignited a spark within you. Until next time, keep exploring, growing, and embracing the beautiful adventure of connecting with your purpose. Stay tuned for more meaningful conversations. If you enjoyed the episode today, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And thank you for joining me on this journey.